It says it's recording, so.
Yep.
Oh.
It's showing the little recording button.
All right, is this working? Seems like it is. Can y'all see this?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm
No.
so glad that I didn't do my presentation earlier because all I had was a Google document. It was so boring. So I got inspired and I was like, okay, I'll try and figure out how to make it pretty. I set this up with just some like law dictionary definitions, a little bit of history on trust. This might be basic knowledge for some people, but I feel like it kind of helps me when I'm filling out the information to kind of get the idea of each word's like real meaning behind it. Okay, so we've got the history of trust. Where and when did the no. Okay, there we go. Where and when did the concept of a trust begin? The law of trust first developed in the 12th century from the time of the Crusades under the jurisdiction of the King of England. When a landowner left England to fight in the Crusades, he conveyed ownership of his lands in his absence to manage the estate and pay and receive feudal dues, on the understanding that the ownership would be conveyed back on his return. However, Crusaders often encountered refusal to hand over the property upon their return. Unfortunately for the Crusader, English common law did not recognize his claim. As far as the king's courts were concerned, the land belonged to the trustee, who was under no obligation to return it. The Crusader had no legal claim. The disgruntled Crusader would then petition the king, who would refer the matter to his Lord Chancellor. The Lord Chancellor could decide a case according to his conscience. At this time, the principle of equity was born. The Lord Chancellor would consider it unconscionable that the legal owner could go back on his word and deny the claims of the Crusader, the true owner. Therefore, he would find in favor of the returning Crusader. Over time, it became known that the Lord Chancellor's court, the Court of Chancery, would continually recognize the claim of a returning Crusader. The legal owner would hold the land for the benefit of the original owner and would be compelled to convey it back to him when requested. The Crusader was the beneficiary and the acquaintance the trustee. The term use of land was coined and in time developed into what we know now as a trust. In medieval English trust law, the settlor was known as the feoffr to uses, while the trustee was known as the feoffee to uses, and the beneficiary was known as the sesticade use, or sesticade trust. So I found this really interesting because it's almost like we are the Crusader that's coming back and claiming ourselves the true owner. And I'll explain a little bit more of this too, what's happening in court. Like a lot of times when we get a ticket, they're actually making a constructive trust because in their mind, there isn't one yet. Constructive trust and involuntary trust. According to Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, page 1510, a constructive trust is a trust raised by construction of law or arising by operation of law, as distinguished from an express trust. Constructive trusts do not arise by agreement or from intention, but by operation of law, and fraud, active or constructive, is their essential element. So right there, they're actually saying that it's a fraud in the first part, but it's almost like they have no choice. If you don't have a trust set up for yourself, they kind of have to set one up for you. So your case number, they're actually starting a constructive trust based on that case number. And a lot of times, this is where people start studying like, oh, well, I'm going to make the judge the trustee, or like all this kind of crazy stuff. Like they're trying to bait and switch, like who has to be the trustee. But I think that this is the beauty of Savo. It's like you're setting up a trust in the first place that kind of like would put in place that like none of this would ever happen. In a sense. That's kind of, yeah, you already have one set up because it says it's as distinguished from an express trust. So on the next page, I've got right here the definition of an express trust. Oops. It's a direct trust, a trust created or declared in express terms and usually in writing, as distinguished from one inferred by the law from the conduct or dealings of the parties. A trust directly created for specific purposes in contrast to a constructive or resulting trust, which arises by implication of law or the demands of equity. Trusts which are created by the direct and positive acts of the parties, by some writing or deed or will, or by words expressly or impliedly evincing an intention to create a trust. So therefore, even if you have an intention to create a trust, it's an expression. If you're voicing or you're writing down that you intend on expressing a trust, it's very powerful. Like even just getting one started is better than not having one at all. And any of the trusts that you do, whether it's like revocable or irrevocable, all of these different ones, it's all an express trust. So this is my last page right here. I have the definitions of a claim, a lien, and an encumbrance. And at some point, this is what we're going to want our private trusts to do. A claim, by definition, is to demand as one's own or as one's right, to assert, to urge, to insist. It's also a cause of action, a means by or through which claimant obtains possession or enjoyment of privilege or thing, demand for money or property as of right. And I found this little section that was below that very interesting. With respect to claims to a negotiable instrument, of which a holder in due course takes free, the term claim means any interest or remedy recognized in law or equity that creates in the claimant a right to the interest or its proceeds. If you look up the definition of the word lien, the first word it says is it's a claim. That right there is like really powerful.
Yes.
That's what I've been telling everybody.
Yeah,
You
that
express
is
that
just,
claim through your affidavit and you make it public with the Secretary of State.
as soon as I saw that in the definition, I just like laughed out loud. I was like, a claim. That's it. It's also considered an encumbrance or charge on property for payment of some debt, obligation, or duty. Qualified right of property which a creditor has in or over specific property of his debtor as security for the debt or charge or for performance of some act. Right to enforce charge upon property of another for payment or satisfaction of debt or claim. And I'd never ever heard anybody use the word encumbrance, so I had to look that one up. And it said any right to or interest in land which may subsist in another to diminution of its value, but consistent with the passing of the fee by conveyance, a claim, lien, charge, or liability attached to and binding real property, example, a mortgage, judgment lien, mechanics lien, lease, security interest, easement, or right of way, accrued and unpaid taxes. If the liability relates to a particular asset, the asset is encumbered. While encumbrances usually relate to real property, a purchaser of personal property is provided with a warranty of title against unknown encumbrances. And just today, when I was like really thinking about it, I realized that the most popular lien that everybody's like heard of is a mechanics lien. And it's very easy to understand the concept of that. It's like if a mechanic like worked on your car and you don't pay him, he can put a mechanics lien on the car and, you know, you're
You
screwed.
know what that's based on?
Well, I feel like it basically is the same principle. We put all the energy into the straw man. So when we put, or you know, when the private trust puts a lien on it, it's like,
In simplest terms and in layman's terms, that mechanic has the right because he has proof that he tendered his consideration. The other party did not. So whenever we have proof that we have tendered consideration on any level, we automatically have the right to file a lien. Just sidebar.
that's what, just looking up these definitions, it was like kind of clicking. I was like, wow, you know, this makes sense. This is really good.
Another thing with the mechanics lien, it's not just a mechanic, somebody that works on vehicles.
Mhm.
A mechanics lien is also what we use in contracting, because my husband's a general contractor. So if he has done work on a house and he has not yet received full payment, he can file a mechanics lien for the balance of the payment due in the contract.
Yeah. This is just really powerful stuff. I'm so
Yes,
glad
it
that
is.
I found Savo, and like everything's just kind of falling into place.
Amen.
And well, that's really all I had so far on my
Man,
end.
this was so delicious, man. I thought you had more. Keep going.
I know. I was like kind of stumped. I was like, how do I go further than this? I was like, this is but that's kind of almost the beauty of it too. It's like really that simple. All we have to do is get our paperwork set up in that express trust, and it's powerful in all the courts. It like shuts all this other stuff down, I think.
That's right. That's what I keep trying to tell everybody. You got to hide in the trust. Literally.
Yeah. The Crusader coming back.
Yes. Anybody have any questions? I think that was extremely enlightening, and I'm going to look forward to going back and looking at this video myself, just rehashing. Very good, insightful, incredible information here. Any
I really appreciate you.
Yeah, that was a great job, Kat.
Yeah, and the one thing that was really interesting too, in my experiences of going into court and talking to the judge, he reacted very strange when I said that I was starting a trust. Like it almost made him like sit up in his chair. He was like, "Really?" So there's something to it. Like when they hear words like that, when they hear things like that, it kind of perks their ears up. That's not normal. I think people usually just go in there and pay the ticket or go to jail, one or the other.
Well, something I've heard will happen when you have everything in order, all your paperwork's in order, you are in the correct status, and you have to go to court. They will not have you in public court. You will go in when the room is clear, because the courts don't want the rest of the people learning what you know.
Let me explain to you just this one piece. The thing is, what people, the dot that people aren't connecting is with court. Okay, when we get in there, right, we're trying to say, hey, I'm the executor of the account. I want to settle the account. And the judge is laughing. I'll tell you why the judge is laughing. Because we haven't served him any papers from the IRS with TTEE behind our name. It's a complete different game changer when you really understand the documents you're supposed to be submitting to these people. What do you think a judge is going to do when you can prove you are the TTEE of your own name? They're gonna understand that you understand, hey, I have the right to settle this claim right now. You're operating in false law. Everything you're doing is fraud. Hey, I know exactly what to do with a person like you. They're used
Checkmate.
to dealing with people that don't know what to do with how they're operating.
And they don't want you teaching other people.
No, absolutely. I'm not, the brighter this light shines from Savo, the more I'm going to be an enemy to a lot of people. They don't, this has been apex information blocked off by the bar attorneys that have been monopolizing the market and top billing every year. Why do you think lawyers are, attorneys are so wealthy? So it was really,
And
really
I do
good.
know what you were talking about, Beth, that because every time I went in there, they'd have me at the very end of the docket because they wanted to do mine last.
That too. Yeah.
And I'll tell y'all just real quick, two other things that I noticed that kind of stuck out in my mind is like, I was like taking notes every way they reacted to certain things that I did or said. One thing that I actually saw fear in the judge his hand was like shaking really bad when he held this piece of paper that I had handed him. It was a affidavit. I wrote it by hand in red ink, and I had crossed the entire back from one corner to the other diagonal, and I wrote on it, "Further affiant saith not," and I'd signed it, and I put my thumbprint. And when he saw that, he was handing it to the other lawyer, and his hands were
Yep.
shaking like really bad. He didn't want to look at it. He didn't want to be held liable. He was like really scared. Um, and then the other thing is, this is just probably my favorite moment in court ever, and I just want to share this with everybody so you can all use it. I actually witnessed that this worked. So this lawyer just kept coming up with the most weird lies. Like he was actually fabricating all this weird stuff, not even based on reality. And I was able to finally shut him down. I said, "Isn't this lawyer just a third party interloper? Everything he says is mere hearsay. Yeah, he's a secondhand witness." I said that. And the judge actually was like stumbling over his words. Like he was trying to say, no, he's not, but he knew that I was right. But he was still trying to maintain a semblance of like control.
Right.
It was very interesting to see him react that way. He was kind of like, oh, well, he's kind of like trying to BS. But from that point on, that lawyer did not say a thing. So I know for a fact that really works, in case anyone needs that in the
Powerful.
future.
I had a similar situation. It's on Instagram where we were we were trying to get some documents recorded, and the boss who ran the show, her hand was just shaking like Don Knotts, and she completely covered her badge. And they were terrified. And I was just telling them what the law said and explaining that I was aware that they were under a fiduciary oath to record documents, and that, they're practicing law from their position, and it's illegal. And it's on the Instagram. She was shaking like Don Knotts. I asked her, "Why are you shaking? Why are you so scared?" And
You
why
called her out.
why are you covering your name badge?
She gave you her nickname.
Huh?
I remember that video. I remember they gave you their nickname, not the full name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I go at them like a bulldog, whether we in the court or wherever, it doesn't matter. That's how you have to do, honestly. Otherwise, they're just going to continue to do what they've done to us.
Yep, I agree. I do want to add on to what Catherine mentioned about court and some things I was reading about equity, because the private trust that you have us setting up correlates to equity. And when it comes to the administrators, those judges, they actually know the difference between private and public.
That's
And
right.
they try to be careful of not to say certain things, especially if it's on the record, out in public, because certain things are only supposed to be said in private in the judge's chambers for people who have invoked trust law.
That's right. Powerful.
Yeah, it is true. You just reminded me. I had been kind of, I guess you could say, like coached into certain things never to say in public in court. And of course, I knew that the whole courthouse is considered public because they'll even make public notices by shouting in the hallway. So at the end of one of my hearings, the judge told me, "What were you going to tell me in private?" I had sent him a notice in the mail beforehand requesting, what was it? Like a meeting in private chambers. I was going to try to talk to him one-on-one and settle it outside of, public. And he had rejected it. And supposedly if he rejects it 3 times, and you have to tell him like at the beginning of the court hearing, like, "Did you receive my letter?" So he has to say yes. He has to read the letter
Right.
out loud, which was
Yep.
awesome. And if he rejects it 3 times, it's a dishonor. But I kind of was like shaken, so I didn't really drill it home that third
Yep.
time like I
The
should have.
3 times is definitely important. It's definitely symbolic with getting into private, into chambers, because what happens is, as I mentioned with the script that the clerks have to follow to see if you're on your square, it's also something that the judges slash administrators follow too, because in the public, they're all looking at us as enemies, as belligerent. But after the third time, if you would have, seen that all the way through, then the switch flips and they see you as a friend and they try to help as much as they can. But a lot of people don't know to get it into chambers because they can't do it in the
And
public.
the reason behind the 3 is because it's considered that it could be an accident if you say something once or twice, but 3 times they know it was intentional, and it becomes actually fact and
Third
law
time's
at
the
that
charm,
point.
huh?
Oh, yeah, that's what they say. So anyway, when I was done with that hearing, he had stated, now we're in private, now we're off the record, what would you have said to me in private? And I refused because I felt like this is not private, we're in a room full
Right.
of people. So he was still trying to trip me up and see if he could, he was still trying to get me to screw up and be in dishonor.
Hey, Catherine, can you turn over host to Beth?
Sure can. Let me, how do I do that?
You go into participants, and then you go to where Beth's name is and where it says more. And then when you click more, it will offer you the option to make her the host.
Okay, got it.
All right. So can everybody see my screen?
I love this.
Yes.
Yes.
There we go. So I'm kind of the flip side, little bit of my journey and the struggles I've run into without Savo. When I first started on this, part of the challenge my husband had was, it was before he was my husband, was just getting this old set in her ways, toe the line white woman to figure out that what he was talking about was real. But when I started with this accepted for value, knowing nothing about secured party creditor, knowing nothing about trusts, nothing about security agreements, UCC1 filings. I was following somebody named April Lejeune out on YouTube. And this exemption ID is, I don't remember how it was constructed, but it's supposed to be the routing number, but it's the public routing number, which is not supposed to be used by us. And then what's under the black square is social security number. So you have, full name, etc. And then on whatever bill you're submitting or whatever debt you're submitting to be discharged, you're supposed to do this money order thing over the payment coupon. And when I tried that, I got a nastygram from the IRS saying that I had filed a frivolous return, which it obviously was not a tax return, that if I continued, they would not respond, but I would still be liable. The supposed charge for such claims is $5,000. And in this letter that they sent me, they included a payment coupon, though it didn't have any amount on it, as if they were expecting me to just pay them $5,000. I ignored it. I still received my 2019 tax refund, which was a statutory tax return filing, your usual tax return, with no issues. So obviously they were not holding this $5,000 fine over my head. Otherwise, I would not have received any refund. The next thing, I tried doing a trade name, and this was my application. And this was through the state of Arizona. And so I had my, back up. Oh, anyways, this was the response that I got from this wench.
Oh, go back. I want to see that page before this one too, though.
All right, let's see. There we go. This is all online. Everything they do is online. So I had saved this off when I filed it. So it's a trade name under the entity type person. You have to give a nature of business for the trade name. So I just said personal finance. The business address, and this was, I didn't have the care of, and I don't think it allowed you to put brackets around the zip code, but I had not heard of that yet. So I had the lowercase Bethany Marie Lang, so the upper lower. It wouldn't let me put it in reverse. And then the all uppercase. This is supposed to be my DBA. Part of the challenge of filing online is you're restricted in what you can put in the forms or the fields. So I get this back, that my trade name application request for all caps Bethany Marie Lang was rejected because an individual's name cannot be registered as a trade name. A descriptive word must be added. And I tried a couple different times with different, I put a miss, I put different descriptive words, and nothing would work. I ended up filing in Minnesota.
Do you think it would have worked if you were trying to do it through the trust?
I suspect it would have.
I think so too.
So yeah, this has been one of my actually several challenges with Arizona, is with the way that I was learning how to move in the all caps versus upper lower. Then this was my UCC1 filing. This was the second attempt that I did. And I put some comments and highlighting. So I noticed when we were doing the lesson on UCC1s that the organization name had the trust name. So this was the way that I had been taught and this is one of the things that was really disappointing, is this was taught on Yusuf L's SPC University. And Yusuf has been operating in this manner for 30 plus years as an SPC. So the fact that he's giving instructions that don't work was disheartening.
Yep.
By this time I had the care of, and I had the brackets. And the trust name obviously is similar to the person name. I had the depository trust address for my strawman account. And I tried to differentiate, this was my second attempt. So I tried to differentiate by putting no middle name and using an L suffix. And I had my PO box by then. And then the collateral statement that I was being taught to put in was from the security agreement, just the collateral list, not the whole 80 something items, but the first bulk items without the line returns. And then I continued it in an attached file. So the response to that, this was the second rejection. This one, actually, I got 2 pages. The first one was just 1 page. It said, ineligible for filing, documents lack evidence of a commercial transaction, decision based on Title 47 in its entirety, which is this massive title. And with this one, I had submitted the security agreement, the hold harmless, the whole packet of all of those forms, and it was just rejected out of hand, even though I had a security agreement that had been executed and signed by a notary. And then this was something I was going to call out in this second page that she sent, because I know we talked about the self-addressed stamped envelope. They will no longer mail acknowledgements of any recorded UCCs unless you include the addressed stamped return envelope. So I was just reinforcing what was said in an earlier lesson. So this was the security agreement that went with it. And this, again, I took the same base that Savo took with that security agreement in the back of the redemption manual. So it's almost 30 pages long, has 80 something items listed in the collateral, but I put a lot of content in there from Yusuf L's site. And again, following this upper lower, so real woman, upper lowercase versus juristic person, straw man, dummy corporation, U.S. administrative vessel, Bethany Marie Lang. So this is what the Secretary of State was rejecting, because I don't have a trust in here. I have Lang, comma, Bethany Marie. So I'm assuming that that was the bulk of her objection. So now the next, this was how I was taught to do the trust. So this is the trust that I currently have in place that I'm going to be replacing, since it is revocable. I'm going to replace this trust with one done with Savo.
Mommy.
Can everybody mute, please?
So this, again, I have the upper lowercase of my name, which is what's causing the conflict. I'm fairly certain, because I'm, Lang, comma, Bethany M is the trustee, and it's Bethany M. Lang under declaration of trust is the name of the trust. And this was taught through Brother Truth as well as Yusuf L. Now, the rest of the trust, what I found interesting, the body of the trust is identical. It's just the way that it's written with the naming that's different.
They have articles of trust in theirs too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is just a snippet from the cover page.
Okay.
I do have, let's see. I'd have to take it out of SlideShare mode. I can bring the documents up.
Oh, you don't have to. I was just curious.
So this has been the
Mine needs to mute.
whoever's moaning.
Who is that, yo?
Hello?
Who is it that we need to remove from the group? It's not paying attention.
It's Olga.
Okay. So this first part has been the things that have gone wrong in what I've been doing so far. But I did also want to include some of the things that I've done right, or that I've gotten done, and that some people, we've been talking about the birth certificate authentications. So this one, this is the federal. You see the little brass rivet. And they have a number at the top, and it mentions the state that the birth certificate came from, and is are entitled to full faith and credit.
Hey, I don't have the ability to remove that person because I'm not host, but if we're sure who it is, please remove that person because they're clearly not paying attention to class.
There we go. It was Olga. Okay. I don't know who all else I muted, but so this was the federal, the cover of this federal. Come on, I clicked the button. There we go. This was, and you can see you cannot separate it, so I did a copy with it kind of folded back a little bit. The one from Montana, they do an apostille, they don't do an authenticated copy. And here's some of the ways that they ensure that it's going to be untampered with, is they overlap the pages. So this is the birth certificate on the side that you see back here. And there's this seal that overlaps the two pages. And then what I don't have, because I only had a limited screen space, there's a staple at the top and the bottom attaching this cover page to the underlying birth certificate. So if those staples are removed, or if this is off somehow, it shows that it could have been tampered with. So that's that chain of custody. And then this is mine from Michigan. This is the state authentication, and you see it has this seal here that attaches the letter to the birth certificate, and it's stapled, as well as the seal down here. And then two other things I noted on here: should be given full faith and credit in all courts of justice and elsewhere. And this is the one from the state. And then the way that they do the date.
Boom.
Yep, the way they do the date, this formal way of doing the date, 20th day of April in the year of our Lord, 2020-20. And that has significance in making it a real document of the land. And then this was just a blow up of this section down here. You see the seal in its entirety, and then there's a number underneath it. And then this is the cover of my federal authentication on this. So again, here's the number. It's different from my husband's. The brass rivet, the same, entitled to full faith and credit. Certificate is not valid if it is removed or altered in any way whatsoever. So this brass rivet is the way that that is determined. This is a picture of the back corner. So the other side of this rivet, you can see it goes through that seal that was on the state authentication. And here's the staple that's under the seal. So that state letter that's stapled to the birth certificate under the seal, and then the federal goes through the seal with the brass ring. So all of that is establishing that chain of custody. This is the other thing that we got done. It's not exactly the same as Savo's copyright notice. This one has 2 copyrights in it. So it is my husband's various names and his son. Now we're having challenges getting the state of Wisconsin to even acknowledge that his son exists. They will not send a birth certificate. They keep saying that the name doesn't exist. But down here, the common law copyright, 2002 is when he reached age of majority, and 2009 is when his son was born. So those are the 2 copyright years that are in the copyright notice. When they record it, you'll recognize this recording block. This is from Savo's documents. And they filled in over here. Now, one thing I noted when I was getting ready for this presentation, this is a copy of the top page, and then underneath is the original that I sent. So this 30 dash, I'm not sure what the 5 is, and the E means envelope. So that's how their annotation for, they have a return envelope, and I sent them their $30. I think that was it. Yep. So then if anyone wanted to look at, like, here's the trust. It's on an external drive, so it takes a few minutes to wake up. So this is actually one that I did from the Brother Truth website, but when I was reviewing the homework, other than some formatting differences in this section, and I don't have a 9.8 number for it yet, but everything else, it's the same articles, the language is the same.
Okay.
And I was going back and forth, word for word, and other than, and I made this one revocable, the one on Brother Truth is irrevocable. And now I'm really glad I made it revocable because I can replace it with the correct one.
Yep.
That's how I feel too. I made a revocable one before I knew anywhere what I know now, and I'm so
So when
glad.
you create the new one, you guys just make sure you specify in the new one that you are revoking the old
Yep.
one.
Yeah, you have to specifically call out the full name and date of the old one that it's being revoked, and replaced by this new one.
And make sure if you create it irrevocable, you got to make sure you're going to know in advance it's not something you're going to want to change 10 years later.
Yep. That's why I made it revocable.
I did the same thing as you too, Beth, as I made mine in my all caps name. And so I want to fix that as well.
Now I'm going to have to use this for taxes this year because I had already claimed myself exempt at work, so they have not been taking out income tax.
Mm.
So even though the state of Arizona refuses to let me file the UCC-1, I do have the security agreement and I have the trust. This is actually the working copy. I don't think I scanned in the notarized one, but it is notarized.
Yeah, all I did before was just print out the trust, and I had a notary, you know, and that's it. I didn't even actually file it or record it anywhere.
Right. And it's a private trust, so there's no place that you have to record it or report it other than maybe what you said, the certificate or the declaration of trust or both, but not the full trust, right? Michael?
Yeah, I think it's only the declaration of trust and the certificate of trust.
Right.
What was the question? Say it again.
The only things we should ever have to file or record in regards to our trust are the certificate of trust and or the declaration of trust, not
Correct.
the body of the trust itself.
Correct. Because you notice when we apply for the EIN, it never asks you specifically or directly who the beneficiary is. That's the whole point of it being a private trust, to keep private who the beneficiary is. So usually on the declaration, if I'm correct, and the certificate, who the beneficiary is not listed. It's only listed in the actual confidential private trust itself.
Now I had a question on that with the beneficiaries. Let me see if I can find it. The both trusts, the one that I did and the one that's in the master file, have one beneficiary listed. Hey, that's not where that's supposed to go. Get over here. Here, beneficiary shall be known as, oh, and I did include my husband and his son.
Okay.
Are we supposed to be listing all the beneficiaries like this?
No, the way I would recommend you, I want to give you an example. We have one client who he wants to create a family trust and name that family trust the Star Family Trust because most of the people in his family are named after a star. So what I'm trying to get other people to understand, which I was going to touch on from your paperwork, is we haven't acquired the full understanding of separating ourselves from the name. We still don't understand that we are not the name. Your natural person is not that name. As soon as you accept that and understand that, it's gonna open up a whole HD world to you. So with this Star Family Trust, let's just say hypothetically each person is named after a star. And if you are deciding based on your nationality and your heritage and your culture to name yourself Orion the Star, then Orion is who will be named as the beneficiary, because the beneficiary is the natural person, you. So
this is where we would use that silent name.
Correct. And so if you're going to name your children and your husband, you're not going to use any name that is on any contract anywhere in commerce.
Okay.
So that's kind of like fulfilling scripture where it says we're given a white stone with our name on it and nobody else knows that name.
Yeah, and your lives are hidden, and Messiah is supposed to be hidden. Like everything we're supposed to be doing is in trust with him as the sovereign over us. And so it's not really a sovereign if you're not going to rightfully throne him and replace the government, who we have made our God in so many ways because we obey them over obeying what we really know to be the truth.
Yeah, I wanted to tell everybody, like, the word petition, if you look it up, the etymology of the word petition means to pray to or a deity.
Correct.
And I found that really crazy because, especially with politics, people are always saying, oh, sign this petition on such and such cause, sign this petition. And when I realized that the word petition meant to pray to someone like a deity, I was like, oh my gosh, nobody should be doing these petitions.
Everybody has to come up with a silent name. I'm not a fan of the appellation. The appellation, like, I'm not a fan of that term. I feel there's a lot of dark cloud that has been attached, negative connotation. It's really simple. You're just operating in trust. You're either a trustee or you're a grantor or you're a beneficiary. I think if you keep it in there, everything else springs from that. And so everybody needs to understand that you have to ultimately, if you have been declaring yourself as a US citizen, or if you've been declaring yourself as a white or a black or African American, you don't have any standing, and you need to create something that will identify your nationality and who you are as a natural person that is created by you, completely separate from the government. You have the right to do that, and there's no one who's going to contest it. And so when you understand that, then you understand there's a whole series and world of documents that that name is supposed to be connected to, that doesn't necessarily get connected to any commercial contract. So the confusion is coming in because all of these gurus are not showing people how to separate themselves from the freaking name, because we all think we're the name. And so we think because we lowercase it, we change it. Or we think because we changed the name, we're doing something. You're not doing anything. You have to completely separate your brain and your perception of who you are as a person and a divine being from the name, period. And then figure out, okay, what is my name? What is my nationality? There are proper documents, affidavit of life, ecclesiastical deed poll. There's a whole series of documents that you will establish and declare who your natural person is. And then you get to turn around and show how that natural person is the owner of the trust and is the controller of the corporation. And so now everything in commerce has been placed in its proper context. The corporation and the registration of the fictitious name and the DBA and all of that, whatever process you choose to establish that administrative pile of documents in tandem with another pile of administrative documents, such as the private trust. You know, we're supposed to be watermarking our docs. We're supposed to be putting seals on our docs. We're supposed to be doing everything a government does. We don't need anybody's authorization. We're just supposed to be serving notice of what we're doing. And so the three areas, I want to make sure everybody, I will be redundant with that. That is one of the pieces that makes Sabo different, is enabling you guys to understand how important it is to really establish your natural person and to disconnect it from being intermingled with what your corporate name is. That's a corporation, that's a vehicle that was created for you to transmit your power, your life force energy into commerce so that you can work, you can provide goods and services, you can receive monetary compensation according to whatever infrastructure is in place. Okay, we're playing this real life Monopoly Matrix game here. So you got to understand the rules to the game. Everybody read the instructions the first time Monopoly came out. Nobody just popped out the board and started playing. So this is where we're supposed to be doing what we're doing right now. This is very well spent time, a group of individuals that are committed to coming together to overstand and understand everything that's going on around us, because so many others are not. So I will be redundant with trying to make sure certain things are very much well understood with you guys. And if you got questions, shoot them.
Well, you give me an idea for another teaching. I could do one on like the seals and stamps and
Good. Then you
and
need to start working on that one, because you are going to be teaching again next week.
yeah, and I've even got one of the little bracket things that you use to punch the brackets onto the piece of paper.
This
Like
was a
the little
good
brass seal that the State Department uses?
Yeah, and I can explain like the meaning behind all this and go into more details on that.
That would be
Cool.
lovely.
Does everybody understand the concept of the natural person and establishing that in a very independent way, apart from everything you have been taught? Do all of you guys grasp and understand that?
I had a question. So the natural person is a name that you create separate from your corporation name.
The natural person is the being that's talking to me right now, you.
And I'm talking about when I file for the paperwork, when I fill in the paperwork, what did I put down for natural person? Did I put a name that I created myself?
Is this Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Yeah, we just had a whole dialogue of this, and it's in text messages. Yeah.
We are creators. So yeah,
Supposed to be
absolutely.
creating
You're
the
supposed to be
name.
creating.
I thought that's how we came to the whole name that you've come up with. I thought you understood that. Yeah. It's your family name. It's your natural person. It's your nationality. It's completely separate from trust. It's completely separate from corporation.
Got it.
It's in your updated and revised privatization file, multiple documents that are allowing you. And that was the final document that I was trying to remember what I wanted to add to the privatization file to supplement the affidavit proof of life. I'm going to add the ecclesiastical deed poll to the privatization file so that you'll be able to see there's a series of documents for the natural person, a series of documents for the trust, a series of documents to establish the corporation. So everybody understands the concept.
Yes.
You do understand y'all have to establish that you are a natural person who has been given sovereign and alienable rights by the one who created you. That has nothing to do with the Constitution or anything.
And that is that silent name. The natural name is
Correct.
the silent name.
Correct. Now, that name, deeper into the game, is really supposed to go in depth, pledging who your allegiance to and who your God is, so that that divine sovereign right really is established. It's all about who you're pledging your allegiance to.
That's really deep spiritually.
Yeah. You're supposed to be on the record. You know, we hear the scripture that talk about if you deny me before men, I'll deny you before my Father. So that just made me feel like somehow, some way, everybody's going to be held accountable and responsible for declaring, okay, well, how have we been making public record? Well, why not make public record and declare who you are and what tribe you're from and who your God is? Why not? It's powerful. It's what's supposed to be done as a natural person, so that your inalienable rights cannot be infringed upon by some man with his wicked, evil, fraudulent, the devices we see in play today.
One thing that scripture does say is to come out of Babylon, and Babylon is actually a three-part series. One is religion, one is economics, and one is government. So there's a three-part to that Babylon. Coming out of religion is one thing, but
Yep.
the economic system is another, and then coming out of the government. Because if we don't come out, we will get what they're going to get. Their plagues or whatever. Thanks for letting me
I'm trying to
share.
show people the way that I truly believe is the way out. You've got to find a way to dethrone this system. And I believe this is the legal way to correctly dethrone the system, is by understanding the game. What better way to win the game than to understand it and play it better? Play it right and not cheating. We can't lose. It's just nobody wants to play the game because it's too much. It's it's a lot of work.
This is another document that was faxed into the Office of Personnel Management, the federal, and supposedly this is to change your ethnicity and race identification.
But that's bull crap. That's fraudulent. That's statutory right there. Because when it's real, it's supposed to say nationality, not ethnicity.
Interesting. Yeah, they were saying that there is no
Black or African American has zero standing. That's not
exactly.
nationality.
It's not. Black racial group is not an original peoples. They were saying to use something that has original peoples. So having origins in the original peoples of North and South America, and since we were born on the land of America, we are original to America. And then here having origins in any of the original peoples.
That's for white. White has zero standing. White is not a nationality. You
Right,
got to find out what your bloodline is. That whole document right there is just a document designed to continue to keep people confused, perpetuating the fraud and not going on the record and correcting their status the right way. I believe that correcting the status is establishing your natural person and your nationality. And I believe it is changing the status of the name, the corporation, internally in the system of the game, and that is with the IRS.
Right. Yeah. And this was something I noticed that you had never said anything about this form. So
look at the top, scroll to the top.
Ethnicity,
Ethnicity and race. Think about those two words. They're both statutory bullcrap words. They're not real. Look those words up in the Black's Law Dictionary. So ethnicity doesn't have any standing. Race doesn't really have any standing. There's only one race, it's the human race.
Right. And my actual background is German, French, and English.
Exactly. And you're supposed to find out the root of your bloodline and your nationality. And on your natural person documents, you are supposed to declare all of your bloodline roots and nationality. And your natural person name is supposed to be named after the roots of your heritage and your nationality.
On that, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because just recently I went through Ancestry.com, and I won't ever do the DNA because I think that they keep your DNA and like all this corrupt stuff with it. But I was doing my own research on there, and I was able to find, like, through my dad's side, all the male, line, like all the way really, really, really far back. But seemed like, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but it basically led all the way to Japheth, son of Noah.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was really interesting. And because the last name is Reed, and it goes all back to like Thomas de Reed, and it was spelled differently, and like all the way through like the kings of Wessex and stuff. I mean, it was
So when
crazy.
you have that, you're
But
supposed to connect that to your natural person docs and your nationality docs.
yeah, I want to have it like printed out or like some kind of
Yeah.
thing. But what's really interesting to me is on my mom's side, her parents were German and Puerto Rican, and I can't find anything on them. And I've been asking my mom right now for more information from my family so I can kind of keep digging, but I can't find anything. So would I just stick with what I've got, like on my dad's side all the way back?
Say that one more time. Would you what?
Do I just stick with my dad's side where I get my last name from and it goes like all the way back?
Well, yeah, because most of the time it's supposed to be based on the father and the father's seed and the bloodline. If you look at even in scriptures, they'll trace back the bloodline of the father, and you'll see scriptures repetitively say son of, son of, son of. So while the lineage and the heritage of the mother is relevant, I believe it's because the father is the ultimate incubator, who passes the seed, which
Yeah, I was
gives
gonna say
the
that.
right to be the senior on the bloodline tracing of family origin. So on top of all of that, any declaration you make pertaining to that will be truth and fact. So why not?
The really interesting thing is, through my grandpa's mother's side, there's actually people in the family that signed the Magna Carta. I found that to be really crazy because the Magna Carta, well, like, I think the one of 1215 is the most important one. There was like several of them. But the one of Magna Carta 1215, I think it was like where they kind of gave the people sovereign rights. I don't know. I'd have to relook it up, but having some like a relation to someone that signed it was just crazy when I was researching all this stuff. And I think that would kind of hold some weight too if I had that in my documents.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Would this be like of primary importance as to like researching into this and getting this established before even considering like getting the EIN and like starting to go through that process to establish the trust?
Well, the EIN really is the trust. The EIN is what allows you to benefit from all the work and activities of the trust and commerce. You got to remember, the trust being established is you just making a decision to redirect your life force energy into a different commercial vehicle. So you don't want to just create a trust just to say you have it. The whole purpose of creating it is to change from putting everything you use on a day-to-day basis in your name into the name of that trust. You can't do that without an EIN number. So you absolutely would have to have that either before or in tandem of its creation.
Okay. And so when you're filing in that EIN, like, are you using your like birth name, or is this where it comes into play, where you use the name that you're going to be like creating?
Yeah, you're using the name that's on your birth certificate. It's the grantor.
Okay.
And you're changing the status of that name as well to trustee in the IRS system. Because when they issue you the number back, that's what they're going to tell you you are the trustee of. That actual number, utilizing it for the purposes it was intended for in commerce.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers it.
Any other questions? I appreciate everybody's time tonight. I got a nice little treat, I think will be considered a treat. So tomorrow night, make sure you bring your popcorn and invite a friend.
All right.
All right.
All righty.
All right. Until then, I'll be available via email and text. Let's connect tomorrow on the thread. I can't sign us out here, can I? Oh, okay. Yeah, I can. All right. I love you guys. Be safe.
I should
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
There we go.